Abandoned by the Galactic, this weak Galactic turns to humanity for refuge. Part 1. The great chamber of the Galactic Council hung in silence, cold and vast. Its walls made of polished obsidian that reflected the dim light of 1,000 distant stars. Delegates from over 200 species stood in their assigned places, tall, armored, or wrapped in shimmering energy fields. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their judgment had already been decided. At the center of the chamber, alone on a raised platform of dull gray stone, stood Kalen. He was small for a galactic being, barely 4 feet tall, with soft silver-blue skin that shimmered faintly under the chamber's lights. His large eyes, dark and deep like still pools, scanned the crowd with quiet dread. His people, the Varelians, had once been respected for their wisdom and peaceful ways, but peace had no value in a galaxy ruled by strength, expansion, and fear. The High Arbiter, a towering figure from the Crothan Empire, stepped forward. His voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by hidden resonators. "Kalen of Varelia," he began, "you stand before the Council not as a representative, but as the last of your kind within our alliance. Your species has failed to meet the minimum requirements of galactic contribution for 3 consecutive cycles. You possess no military fleet, no strategic resources, and no technological advancements of note. Worse, you refuse to participate in collective defense protocols." Kalen lowered his head but did not speak. What could he say? The Varelians had chosen long ago to live without weapons, without conquest, without the endless race for power. They healed, they listened, they preserved knowledge, but in the eyes of the Council that made them useless. By unanimous vote, the Arbiter continued, the Varelian delegation is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All protections, trade rights, and communication privileges are revoked effective immediately. You are no longer under the Council's shield. You are on your own. A low hum of approval rippled through the chamber. No one moved to object. No one even looked at Kalen with pity. To them, he was already gone, a ghost among the living. Guards in sleek black armor approached. They did not touch him. They did not need to. With a wave of their hand, the platform beneath Kalen dissolved into light, and he was gently lowered through the floor into a waiting transport pod. The doors sealed shut with a soft hiss. Moments later, he was launched into space alone. His ship was old, a small scout vessel named the Whisper, barely larger than a human shuttle. It had been gifted to the Varelians centuries ago as a token of goodwill, long before anyone cared about them. Now it was all he had. The ship's systems flickered as it drifted away from the Council's orbital station. Power was low. Life support was stable, but only just. The navigation console blinked with warnings. Kalen sat in the pilot's seat, his hands trembling. He had no home to return to. Varelia had been quarantined years ago after a failed attempt by other species to extract their bioharmonic energy. His people were scattered, hidden, or gone. He was truly the last. For days he floated in silence, watching the stars blur past. Grief weighed on him like a physical force. But beneath the sorrow, a small spark remained. The memory of an old archive file he had once studied. It spoke of a young species on the edge of the Orion Spur, barely spacefaring, chaotic and emotional, but strangely resilient. They called themselves humans. According to the records, humans had fought brutal wars among themselves, yet they also built hospitals, wrote poetry, and sent messages of peace into the void. They rescued strangers. They adopted lost animals. They wept for people they never met. It was illogical, inefficient, and yet it was something the galaxy had forgotten. Kalen wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and turned to the navigation panel. With slow, deliberate movements, he entered new coordinates. Sol System, 3rd planet, Earth. The Whisper groaned as its engines fired, straining against years of neglect. It would take weeks to reach human space if the ship held together, if they even allowed him near their world, if they didn't shoot him on sight. But what other choice did he have? As the ship leapt into faster-than-light travel, Kalen curled into his seat and closed his eyes. He dreamed of green fields, blue skies, and voices that did not judge him by his strength, but by his heart. Back at the Council station, no one spoke of him again. He was erased from the logs, his name removed from the registry. To the galaxy, Kalen no longer existed. But in the quiet dark between stars, a tiny ship carried the last hope of a forgotten people toward a world that might not even know it could be kind. And somewhere in Nevada, a radar technician named Daniel Cruz squinted at his screen, frowning at an odd blip that didn't match any known satellite or aircraft. It was small, slow, and off course. Probably space junk, he thought. But just in case, he logged it. He had no idea that the blip was a life, a plea, a beginning, and Kalen had no idea that Earth would not just be a refuge but a mirror, showing him what true strength really looked like. Abandoned by the Galactic, this weak Galactic turns to humanity for refuge. Part 2. The Whisper did not land gently. Its engine sputtered and died just above the cracked earth of the Nevada desert, and the ship tumbled the last 100 feet in a cloud of dust and smoke. It skidded across the dry lake bed, carving a long scar in the pale ground before finally coming to rest near a cluster of rusted radio towers. Inside, Kalen was thrown against his restraints, his head ringing, his breath coming in short gasps. Alarms blared once, then fell silent as the ship's power gave out completely. He sat there for a long time, listening to the wind howl outside. His body ached, but he was alive. That was more than he had expected. Slowly, he unclipped the harness and stood on shaky legs. Through the cracked viewport, he saw nothing but flat, empty land stretching to the horizon under a pale blue sky. No cities, no ships, no signs of war, just silence. Then, in the distance, he heard the low thump of rotors. Within minutes, 3 black helicopters appeared over the ridge, flying low and fast. They circled the wreck once, then landed in a triangle around it, kicking up clouds of dust. Soldiers in dark uniforms jumped out, weapons raised, moving with sharp precision. Kalen pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding. He had no weapons, no way to fight. All he could do was wait. A voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "Exit the vessel with your hands visible. Do not make sudden movements." Kalen took a deep breath. He opened the hatch manually, the metal groaning in protest. Sunlight flooded in, blinding him for a moment. He stepped onto the hot sand, raising his thin arms as high as they would go. His silver-blue skin shimmered in the desert sun, and his large eyes blinked slowly against the glare. The soldiers did not lower their guns. They watched him like he might explode. Then a man stepped forward. He was tall, with short brown hair and a calm face. He wore a uniform with no visible rank, but the others seemed to listen when he spoke. "I'm Lieutenant Daniel Cruz," he said, his voice steady. "Who are you?" Kalen tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He made a soft clicking sound, then touched his chest. "Kalen," he managed, the word rough and unfamiliar on his tongue. Daniel frowned. "You speak English?" "A little," Kalen whispered. "Learned?" "From old files." That surprised Daniel. He glanced back at his team, then nodded to one of the soldiers who lowered his rifle slightly. "You're not from around here, are you?" Kalen shook his head. "No, from far away." "Need help?" At that moment, a woman approached from one of the helicopters. She wore civilian clothes, jeans and a faded blue jacket, and carried a small device in her hand that beeped softly. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail and her eyes were sharp with curiosity, not fear. "Lieutenant," she said, "I'm Dr. Lisa Morgan, Xenocultural Institute. They called me in as soon as they spotted the anomaly." She looked at Kalen, not with suspicion, but with something close to wonder. "Can you understand me?" Kalen nodded. "Yes, you are human, and you're not," Lisa said gently. "But you came here on purpose. Why?" Kalen's shoulders slumped. "No one else would take me." Daniel and Lisa exchanged a look. This wasn't a weapon. This wasn't an invasion. This was a refugee. They took him to a secure facility near Flagstaff, Arizona. It was clean, quiet, and surrounded by red rock cliffs. Kalen was given a small room with a bed, a sink, and a window that looked out at the stars at night. Guards stood outside, but they were polite. Food was brought to him, simple things like bread, fruit, and water. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. Over the next few days, Lisa visited often. She brought books, tablets, and recordings of human music. She asked questions, not to interrogate, but to understand. Kalen told her about the Galactic Council, about his people, about the shame of being cast out for being peaceful. Lisa listened without judgment. "Humans have been cast out too," she said one evening, sitting on the floor beside his bed. "From their homes, their countries, even their families. We know what it feels like to be unwanted." Kalen looked at her, his eyes wide. "But you still help others?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not always. But we try." Meanwhile, Daniel worked with military analysts to study the Whisper. The ship was unlike anything on Earth. No combustion engines, no nuclear core. Instead, it ran on something they called harmonic resonance, a kind of energy drawn from sound and vibration. It was clean, quiet, and nearly limitless. Engineers were baffled. Politicians were nervous. Rumors spread. Some said Kalen was a spy. Others said he was a test from God. A few even claimed he was a hoax. But Daniel saw the truth every time he looked into Kalen's eyes. This being was scared, alone, and honest. One night, Kalen stood by his window staring at the moon. Lisa found him there. "Do you miss your home?" she asked softly. "I miss the idea of it," he said. "Virelia is gone. But Earth feels possible," Lisa smiled. "We're not perfect. We argue, we make mistakes. We hurt each other. But you also heal," Kalen said. "You build. You welcome." She didn't answer right away. Then she reached out and gently touched his arm. "Then maybe you're exactly where you need to be." Outside, the desert wind whispered through the canyon. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Kalen felt something like hope. He didn't know it yet, but his arrival had already changed things. Deep space monitors had picked up strange signals near the edge of the solar system. Signals that didn't belong to any known human or natural source. Someone was watching. But for now, in this quiet room under a sky full of stars, a human and an alien sat together in silence. Two lonely beings finding comfort in each other's presence. And that was enough. Abandoned by the Galactic, this weak Galactic turns to humanity for refuge Part 3. The first warning came as a burst of static on a deep space listening post near Jupiter. The signal was short, sharp, and encrypted in a code no human system had ever seen. It repeated 3 times, then vanished. Analysts at the United Earth Defense Initiative flagged it as unknown but low priority, until a second signal arrived 2 days later, this time aimed directly at Earth's orbital network. It carried no message, only a single identifier, Zorath. Daniel Cruz was in the mess hall when the alert came through. He dropped his coffee and ran to the command center. On the main screen, a red dot pulsed near the edge of the Kuiper Belt. It wasn't moving like a comet or asteroid. It was holding position, watching. "It's a ship," said Commander Elena Rojas, her voice tight. "Stealth class. No heat signature. No emissions. It shouldn't even be detectable. Could it be friendly?" someone asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not with that name." He went straight to Kalen's room. The Virelian was sitting cross-legged on the floor, tracing patterns in the air with his fingers. Something Lisa said was a form of meditation. When Daniel entered, Kalen looked up and his face went pale. "You've heard it," Kalen whispered. "Zorath," Daniel said. "Who is he?" Kalen stood slowly, his hands trembling. "He is an enforcer, not a soldier. Worse, he carries the will of the Council. If he is here, it means they know I am on Earth, and they want me back. Or dead," Daniel added. Kalen nodded. "Or dead." Within hours, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session. Ambassadors argued in hushed, urgent tones. Some demanded Kalen be handed over immediately, to avoid provoking a galactic power. Others warned that surrendering him would make humanity look weak, or worse, cruel. President Carter Green listened quietly, his fingers steepled, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, Lisa worked with Kalen in a secure lab. She had convinced the science division to let her study the harmonic technology from his ship. What they found stunned them. The energy core could power an entire city for a year with no waste, no radiation, no fuel. It ran on resonance, on balance. "Your people built this to share," Lisa said, her eyes wide. "We built it to heal," Kalen corrected. "To give light without fire." She looked at him. "This could change everything for us." "Only if you are ready to receive it," he replied. Back at the command center, Daniel reviewed footage from long-range telescopes. The object near the Kuiper Belt had moved. It was now orbiting Mars, silent and dark. Then, without warning, 3 of Earth's early warning satellites went offline. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply switched off as if someone had flipped a switch. That was when Zorath made contact. A voice filled every communication channel on Earth. Military, civilian, even personal phones. It was deep, smooth, and utterly calm. "People of Earth," it said, "you are harboring a fugitive of the Galactic Council. Surrender Kalen of Virelia within 1 solar cycle. Failure to comply will result in immediate quarantine sanctions. Your system will be sealed. No ship will enter. No ship will leave. Your species will be isolated until you obey." Panic spread. Stock markets dropped. Governments scrambled. Protests erupted in cities from Tokyo to Berlin. Some called Kalen a danger. Others held signs that read, "Refuge is human." In his room, Kalen watched the news on a small screen. His shoulders slumped. "I should go," he said when Lisa came in. "I never meant to bring this to you." "You didn't bring it," she said firmly. "They did. and we get to choose how we respond. Daniel arrived moments later, his uniform wrinkled from hours of meetings. "The president wants to see you," he told Kalen. "Both of you." They were flown to Washington in a silent jet. President Green met them in a small windowless room beneath the White House. He was older than they expected, with kind eyes and tired lines around his mouth. "I've read your reports," he said to Lisa, "and I've seen the data from the Whisper, this harmonic tech. It's real?"
"Very real," she said. He turned to Kalen.
"And you're willing to share it?" "If you will protect not just me, but the idea I represent," Kalen said. "Peace is not weakness. It is a choice. A hard one, but it is worth making." The president was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Then we make that choice together." That night, a secret order went out to every shipyard, research lab, and defense contractor on Earth. Using Kalen's guidance and Lisa's translations, engineers began retrofitting old cargo haulers and decommissioned freighters with harmonic shields, devices that didn't block attacks, but absorbed and redirected energy, turning violence into stillness. It was defense without retaliation. Daniel was put in charge of the new fleet, not a war fleet, a shield fleet. Volunteers signed up by the thousands, pilots, engineers, medics, even school teachers who knew how to fix engines. They weren't going to fight. They were going to stand. As the deadline neared, Kalen stood on a balcony overlooking the Potomac River. Lisa joined him. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Yes," he admitted, "but not for myself, for you. For what you might lose," she smiled. "We've lost a lot already. Maybe it's time we gain something better." Above them, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, Zorth waited. But down here, on this small, messy, beautiful planet, humanity was choosing something the galaxy had long forgotten: compassion with courage. And that choice would echo farther than anyone knew. Abandoned by the Galactic, this weak Galactic turns to humanity for refuge. Part 4, the day of the deadline, arrived with a heavy sky over the Pacific Ocean. Zorath's ship hung in high orbit, silent and smooth, shaped like a black teardrop against the blue curve of Earth. It had not moved in 12 hours. It did not need to. Its presence was threat enough. On the ground, cities were quiet. Schools stayed open, but fewer children came. Factories ran at half speed. People gathered in parks, in churches, in community centers, watching the news on shared screens. Some prayed, some argued, some simply held hands and waited. In the command center beneath Colorado Springs, Daniel Cruz stood before a wall of monitors, showing every ship in the newly formed SHIELD fleet. There were 23 of them, old freighters, cargo tugs, even a retired deep space research vessel. None carried weapons. All were fitted with harmonic emitters built from Kalen's designs and human engineering. The shields wouldn't stop a direct blast forever, but they could absorb and diffuse energy, turning a killing strike into harmless vibration. It was defense without hate. Lisa Morgan sat at a nearby console, her fingers flying over keys as she monitored Kalen's vital signs. He was aboard the lead ship, the Horizon, not as a prisoner or a guest, but as a guide. He had insisted. "If this is about me," he had said, "I must be there to face it." President Green's voice came over the secure line. "Status, Lieutenant?" "Fleet is in position, sir, holding geosynchronous orbit above the equator. Zorath hasn't responded to our last hail. Keep broadcasting the message, clear and calm." The message had been playing on all open channels for hours. It was simple. Just 20 words spoken in a dozen human languages and one Varelian tone. "We protect those who seek refuge. We do not fight, but we will not yield." On the bridge of the Horizon, Kalen watched Zorath's ship through a magnified viewport. His hands rested on the console, not in fear but in readiness. Beside him, Captain Rita Lopez, a former cargo pilot with a sharp laugh and steady hands, kept her eyes on the readings. "You sure he'll listen?" she asked. "I do not know," Kalen said. "But if he sees only weapons, he will act like a weapon. If he sees something else, maybe he will remember he is more than his orders." Back on Earth, protests had turned into vigils. In New York, people lit candles in Central Park. In Nairobi, students sang songs of peace. In Buenos Aires, strangers shared food and stories under the stars. The world was watching, not with fear alone, but with a strange, quiet hope. Then, without warning, Zorath's ship pulsed with dark energy. A beam of violet light lanced out, not at the fleet, but at a communications satellite near the moon. The satellite vanished in a flash of silent light, A warning shot. Alarms blared on the horizon. "He's testing us," Rita said, her voice tight. "Do not return fire," Kalen said quickly. "Activate harmonic field." Full resonance, the crew obeyed. A soft hum filled the ship as the emitters glowed blue. Around the fleet, the air shimmered like heat over desert sand. Zorath's ship turned slowly, its smooth hull reflecting the sun. Then a voice came through. Not the booming broadcast from before, but a private channel, clear and cold. "Kalen, you have led these primitives into your shame. Step onto an escape pod, surrender yourself, and I will leave their world untouched." Kalen took a breath. He activated the comm. "They are not primitives, Zorath. They are people. And they chose to stand with me not out of ignorance, but out of kindness." "Kindness is a flaw in times of order," Zorath replied. "Or the only thing that keeps order from becoming cruelty," Kalen said. Silence followed, long enough that Daniel, watching from the ground, thought the link had broken. Then Zorath spoke again, quieter this time. "Your fleet is no match for me. I could erase it in seconds." "Then do it," Kalen said. "But know this. When you destroy them, you destroy the last place in this galaxy that still believes in mercy. And you will carry that silence with you forever." On Earth, Lisa held her breath. She knew Kalen wasn't bluffing. He was offering Zorath a choice, not of power, but of soul. Minutes passed. The fleet held its position. Zorath's ship did not fire. Then slowly it began to move. Not toward the fleet, but away, climbing higher into orbit. "He's retreating?" Rita asked, disbelief in her voice. "No," Kalen whispered. "He's thinking." Down in the command center, Daniel felt a strange calm settle over him. Whatever happened next, humanity had already won something. They had shown the galaxy that strength could wear a gentle face. Later that night, Zorath sent a new message. Not to the world, but to the Council. It was short. "Earth is not what we believed. The Varelian is under their protection by choice, not deception. Recommend observation, not sanction." The Council did not reply immediately, but the quarantine order was paused. In the quiet hours before dawn, Kalen stood on the observation deck of the horizon, looking down at the glowing continents below. Lisa joined him via video link from the ground. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it," he corrected. "Together." And for the first time since he left the council chamber, he felt not like a castaway, but like a bridge. The galaxy was still vast and cold, but somewhere in it a small blue world had lit a candle and refused to let it go out. Abandoned by the Galactic. This week Galactic turns to humanity for refuge. Part 5 weeks passed, then months. Zorath's ship remained in high orbit, silent and still, like a shadow that refused to leave. But it did not attack. It did not threaten. It simply watched, and as it watched, something unexpected happened. Other ships began to appear at the edge of the solar system. Not warships, but small diplomatic vessels from minor galactic factions, drawn by rumors of a species that had defied the Council without firing a single shot. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Though nothing was truly normal anymore, Kalen was granted provisional asylum under United Earth law. Not as a guest, but as a protected person. He moved out of the secure facility and into a quiet home on the outskirts of Denver, near the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. The house had large windows, a garden, and a small room filled with books, many of them donated by strangers who had heard his story. Lisa visited often. She brought tea, recordings of birdsong, and sometimes just silence. They would sit on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset, paint the sky in reds and golds. Kalen learned to make human coffee, though he still preferred the herbal brews of his childhood. Lisa learned Varelian humming tones, and sometimes late at night, they would sit together and create soft harmonies that made the air feel warmer. Daniel, now promoted to commander of the newly formed Xenocultural Defense Liaison, worked with engineers to integrate harmonic technology into civilian use. The first harmonic-powered hospital opened in Kansas, providing clean, endless energy for life-saving equipment. Schools in 3 continents began teaching basic resonance principles, not as weapons but as tools for healing and connection. The Galactic Council remained quiet, but their silence was no longer a threat, it was uncertainty. They had expected fear or force from humanity. Instead, they got compassion with backbone. It confused them, and in that confusion, space opened for something new. One morning, a message arrived, not from Zorath, but from the Council's diplomatic branch. It was formal, cautious, and brief. Earth is invited to send a single observer to the next assembly session as a non-voting guest. The purpose is cultural exchange only. The United Nations debated for days. Some feared it was a trap. Others saw it as a historic chance. In the end, President Green made the decision. "We go," he said. "Not to conquer, not to beg, but to show who we are." They did not send a general or a politician. They sent Kalen. With Lisa and Daniel at his side, Kalen boarded a human-built ship retrofitted with Varelian harmonics, the Dawn Chorus. It was small, bright, and carried no weapons, only data crystals filled with human art, music, medical knowledge, and messages from children around the world. The journey to the council station took 6 weeks. When they arrived, the great chamber was different. The obsidian walls still gleamed, but the air felt less cold. Delegates turned as Kalen entered, not with scorn, but with curiosity. Zorath stood near the back, his armored form unreadable, but he did not look away. Kalen did not speak of power or rights. He played a recording, a child in Mumbai singing a lullaby, followed by the sound of wind through redwood trees, then a heartbeat recorded in a neonatal unit in Oslo. He showed images of humans planting trees after wildfires, sharing food after floods, holding hands across borders. "We are not perfect," he said, his voice clear and calm, "but we try. Every day we choose to try." When he finished, the chamber was silent. Then, one by one, delegates began to lower their shields, not in surrender but in respect. Earth was granted permanent observer status, not because it had the biggest fleet or the richest worlds, but because it had shown the galaxy something rare, that protection and peace could walk hand in hand. Years later, the Xenocultural Center opened in Denver. It was built with stone from 5 continents and light harvesting panels shaped like open hands. Inside, children of all nations and one Varelian learned together. Kalen taught them how to listen not just with their ears but with their whole beings, how to find harmony in difference, how to stand for others without losing themselves. Daniel often visited, now retired from active duty, but still advising on interstellar relations. He would sit in the back of the classroom smiling as Kalen guided a group of kids through a simple resonance exercise, their voices blending into a sound that made the windows hum gently. Lisa became the center's director. She kept a small stone on her desk, a piece of the Nevada desert where the whisper had landed. She called it the beginning stone, and high above in quiet orbit Zorath's ship was gone. In its place floated a small galactic observatory, staffed by scientists from 6 species, studying Earth not as a threat, but as a question worth answering. How does a young species learn to be kind in a harsh universe? Kalen never returned to Varelia. His home was here now, among people who had seen his weakness and called it courage, who had offered shelter not because he was strong, but because he was lost. On clear nights, he would walk to the edge of the garden and look up at the stars. He no longer saw them as cold and distant. He saw them as possibilities, as places where other lost souls might one day find refuge. Because Earth had shown the way, and in the quiet dark, he would hum a soft Varelian song, one of hope, of home, of humans who taught a galactic being that the strongest thing in the universe is not a weapon, but a welcome.